Welcome to day 9 of our 30-day art challenge. Today's prompt is mark making, and we will be exploring a really simple, intuitive mark making exercise with different prompts to help us get into our mindful art journal and make marks without judgment. If you haven't already, you can download the free 30-day calendar with art prompts below. For my mark making techniques today, I'm going to be working within circle shapes. I really like to have a container when I'm making some marks, especially just to contain them on the page. So you can either make circles, you can make squares, you can have them be similar to inchies and just have them be an inch large. So you can totally decide on that for yourself depending on your mood, what you feel like, your journal and space, as well as whatever you have. So today we'll just be doing a little bit of an experiment, knowing that you can return to this practice over and over again, and it will be different each time. And the way it can be different each time is I love to give myself different prompts and cues. And so for right now, I'm beginning with a straight line. I'm going to be sharing some prompts today to bring in your environment as a mindfulness exercise, so as part of our meditative art and our meditative drawing. You can use colored pencils, marker, you can be doing this with paint. In each circle or square, we are choosing to, whatever mark we land on, to make that as a repetitive mark or pattern. So this is for a few reasons. One, that simple mark, if this was just one line, will begin to look very different once there's that repetitive pattern. But I notice over time as I do a mark making exercise or when I explore mark making techniques is I notice this dropping in and this slowing down. So after a while, my brain can begin to relax and turn off because I'm not having to think about the next mark that I'm making. I'm simply following, in this case, the lines that I began on the page. So as we move on to our next circle or square, I encourage you to just look around your space where you are, just scanning your room, scanning your art desk, wherever you are currently, and just noticing a particular pattern or shape that your eye feels drawn to. So for me, I have this really gorgeous photo from, I believe, somewhere in Arizona. It's like a canyon, and there's these really lovely rock shapes inside that canyon. And come to think of it, it's right next to my art desk, and so it has a lot of organic flowing shapes and lines, much of what has been appearing in my artwork lately. So I'm just now putting two and two together that photograph that I have hanging over my art desk might be strongly influencing what I make. I'm beginning with some of the organic lines and shapes that I'm seeing in that picture. I'm occasionally looking over to sort of give myself inspiration. I'm not trying to completely mimic it or recreate it. I'm just allowing it to spark and give me some information to then make my own marks and explore that as a mark making technique. And it also is just another part of the practice of being with the marks you're making without judgment. And it's really the piece of without judgment that makes this a mindful art practice or a meditative art practice. Not to say that we won't have judgment, because that's what the brain does. But that act and that practice of noticing when we have thoughts that are critical or judgmental and just making space to be with that and allow ourselves to return back to the marks and make some shapes. You can also just make a scribble in the shape and then embellish that scribble. So that is also something else that can be interesting as you're exploring marks. I do have a Pinterest board that I've already collected, I've been collecting for a while, that has different patterns and shapes and marks. So you can always definitely check that out as well if you find this interesting and you just want a bit more to kind of fuel and spark your own creativity. As you're making the marks, the main consideration is how can you create a pattern? How can you take one of the lines that you've created and continue that forward throughout the shape. Sometimes wherever you begin is not where you end up. It's not what you would anticipate appears for you. Sometimes as you're making marks, you might really enjoy what you're making, and then other times you might really not enjoy it. You might have wished that you didn't make that mark or that you wanted it to look differently. And so again, just noticing as that comes up, and that's really a huge part of the practice, of the process of being with mindful art and meditative art, is to give ourselves the freedom to notice those thoughts, to continue to make marks, giving ourselves permission to just simply show up. One of my mentors, George Cow, he always talks about being strict about showing up and lenient with the results. How can I commit to myself to a creative practice, or to simply playing in my mindful art journal, or just exploring materials, or perhaps it's writing or journaling? How can I give myself permission to do that? Because it's over time, over giving ourselves that space, that we can deepen the connection with ourselves, with our practice. I really see so much of this as a meditative practice through doodling, through mindful doodles. There's a lot of ways that you can learn much more technical steps of making marks. What we're doing today is more of an intuitive mark making practice. So it's allowing ourselves to follow impulses. We're also tuning into our environment and noticing as we're making the shapes, our thoughts and judgment. I have another video which I can link here called Draw the Breath, which you may or may not have seen. It's very simple. It syncs up with your breath as you make marks on the page. And it's a really easy reflection to notice how you're feeling in the moment. And it's a really great, simple meditative practice, especially for those who may not already have a meditation practice, but who could use a little bit of de-stressing. What I think is great about intuitive mark making as well is it can start to loosen us up, so we can make marks without holding them so tightly, holding them so preciously. We're not trying to create a masterpiece. We're really just giving ourselves space to come to our journal and make marks, and just be curious and playful and doodle and be free. I hope this really simple, intuitive mark making exercise helped you to get back into your mindful art journal and make marks without judgment. If you'd like to explore other mark making ideas and prompts, you can check out one of these videos here that I will link up. And otherwise, I will see you for tomorrow's day 10 in our 30-day art challenge. And the prompt will be bold strokes. So we will dive in with a really simple mindful art activity.